Okay, challenge accepted. So, I'm making this video today to talk about probably from what I have watched how many years now, every show that I consider to be a mid show, or basically a show that I consider a 5 out of 10 anime show. And the reason I want to talk about this is because Joey decided to drop a little bit of a YouTube Shorts, and basically all throughout his social media platform, talking about and addressing the whole fact that a 7 out of 10 is not considered a mid tier rating, and in reality, it's a 5 out of 10 that's a mid tier rating. So, in that sense, I want to first and foremost say that I agree with what Joey says, that a 5 out of 10 is mid. It's a borderline baseline tier out type of anime. If it's a 7 out of 10 in my books, I think that that show is really good. It's still watchable. It's still enjoyable. It's not a mid tier ranking, but it is still like it's a lot better than a lot of the other shows that you would see come out per se. So I'm gonna just essentially go through, and it's gonna be a pretty long video. Bear with me, if I can figure this out, and just talk about every show under the sun that I've rated like a 5 out of 10 in the past, and just talk about and briefly go over all of them as to why I consider them to be a mid tier type of show. So without further ado, let's get into my 5 out of 10s that I've ranked so far as of late. And I'm not bullshitting you right here, right now. Here is pretty much everything I've watched up to this point. So we're already at the mid tier point. So again, 6 out of 10s, and boom, look at that, 5 out of 10s here. So like I said, there's a ton here that I could go through right here in this video, but I'm just gonna narrow down to the ones that definitely stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm always gonna exclude hentais because obviously, if I were to talk about every 5 out of 10 hentai like this, for example, we would be here all freaking day. So I more or less was able to pick apart and choose shows already ahead of time and talk about them and break it down. So first and foremost, Helsing. The first Helsing to be exact. This is the definition of a mid-tier anime for its time period. And again, I think that granted, given the fact that this came out back in 2001, that it didn't have a lot of flashy budget animation that we would eventually get with the amazing Helsing Ultimate, really speaks volumes. So, to its credit, I like that Helsing was able to bounce back from this big time with Helsing Ultimate, but you have to understand that when you look back at the first season of Helsing from 2001, there are moments of the show that's really good, really stands out really well, but the animation has aged really poorly. The final sets of episodes kind of go into this weird, off the beam path direction that isn't related to the original manga whatsoever. And that's kind of the reason why Hellsing to this day is like a 5 out of 10 for me, at least for the original one. Next, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this right here, right now, but Mirai Nikki, The Future Diary. Now, look, I want to make this clear is that when Mirai Nikki first came out, I praised the hell out of the show. This is one of those shows that kind of go to the I'm 14 and this is deep type of anime. And again, the show is still enjoyable. The show is still iconic to this day. But with that being said, for someone who is growing up now, who is 26 years old, do I see myself going back to Mirai Nikki and rewatching it and remembering what made the show special? Sadly, no. Again, I don't want to dive into the weeds to what's wrong with Mirai Nikki, but let's just say that when the show goes into holy shit, this is amazing mode, and it goes into that mode. But then the moments where it's like really questionable and you're wondering why you're watching it, that's where it also sticks out. So to kind of get that out of the way, the show is still really good. It's still amazing if I were to watch this when I was back in high school. But when you have to think about the grand scheme of all the other shows I've watched over the years, I just think The Future Diary or Mirai Nikki is just not up there. It's not really like for me too in general. It's just not a top 10 anime for me now. Like I can understand this is gonna be a top 10 for someone out there, but for me, now that I'm growing up and matured, I think a lot of people can agree that now, as time has passed on, this show hasn't aged all too well, sadly, and I'll leave it at that. Moving on though, Watamote. Hoo-wee. Yeah, this show is a show that I really still wish to this day I erased out of my memory because this is the definition of like not only again a mid-tier anime, but this is the definition of what would happen if you take the most socially anxiety type of person and basically make it to a 12 episode torture chamber. This show is the definition of mid, where again you have your main character here, Tomoko, who is literally just the most anxiety bedridden type of person that's so unconfident, so unfaithful. It does have a pretty badass theme song. I will give credit to. The theme song is really good, really creative, stands out. But my god, the anime is just so painfully hard to sit through, especially if you want to watch something that is trying to be like, oh yeah, one day I'm going to be super out there and break up my social barriers and be super optimistic. And this show's not doing it. This show's not doing it at all. This is pretty mid in my books. And I know it could rate this even lower, honestly, given where it is, but I can't deny that there were moments that were somehow okay and were enjoyable. But for me, this just isn't it. There are other shows since then that are much better than Watamote, and I'll leave it at that. Next, Vivid Strike. Yeah, this one I remember pretty vividly for the fact that I watched this back when I had Amazon Prime, when I first started Amazon Prime. And this show is essentially like all talk, no show. It's kind of it. This show, I think you even see if you watch like the early days of YouTube during the late 2010s, clips of this show probably must have thrown around throughout YouTube and throughout the internet because there are scenes in the show that have the whole like bully anime revenge compilation shit, and that's where you get most of it from the show, honestly. So this is like another one of those bully esque type of animes that with a bit of a come ups type of thing. Again, it's hard to sit through. It's really not for the faint of heart if you're not into those type of shows. But overall, I mean, in another thing as to why this show is not super up there is that again, animation is aged pretty poorly. The color schemes is super poppin' in the worst way possible, and the progression of the story is just not all that interesting. Next, though, Overlord Season 2. Yeah, again, another one I'm going to get probably shitted on, but bear with me. First and foremost, I want to say the first season of Overlord I enjoyed, I liked. The second season, when I was watching this at the time, I could not get past the huge drop in animation quality and the story being really weird and all over the place. Again, granted, the show was still pretty good, but after 3 episodes, I just couldn't sit through it, man. I just didn't get the hype surrounding it. And then after seeing like clips of Overlord season 3, it made me not want to watch Overlord altogether. Again, I have no denying that maybe Overlord is a really good show that's a must watch, but for me, I'm just not crazy about it. I'm sorry. There's just nothing interesting about it that made me go back to it in the first place. Again, I get that there's a huge cult following with the show since then, like this with Konosuba and ReZero, but Overlord for me is just not one of them, and I'll leave it at that. Whew, alright, but then so I'm a spider, so what, or Kumotesu ga Nanika. This show had potential to be like a really good, fun, bad anime when it came out back in 2021, and this became one of the ugliest shows I've seen that year. This unironically could even make it to my worst animes of 2021. That's how forgettable the show is. Like, the issues with the show not only being that the animation was super pretty low tier grade of a show, was not only the issue. The other issue with the show was that they were bouncing two different stories in one show, and it made no goddamn sense. And granted, I understand they were trying to adapt the manga to what it's supposed to be, so we get two different perspectives of where we have the spider girl that got isekai, and then we have the group of friends from the school that got isekai with powers and shit. They go through this huge power struggle comeuppance. Meanwhile, the spider's just like, okay, I'm gonna kill this slime. I'm gonna kill this snake, and I'm gonna level up. And it's like, where's all this coming from? I don't. How are these two stories connected to each other? It makes no sense. And again, I understand that it makes sense in the manga, but when you're trying to put it from manga to anime, you have to do a better job portraying how this all pans out at the end. Because at this point, the show became super confusing, really a mess of its own self, and it was just hard to sit through after a certain while, but I somehow freaking persevered and gave it a 5 out of 10. Alright, this one, yeah, another one. We never learned Bokuben. Again, I like the show. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and I get that this was memeified the fuck a lot when this came out. But again, when you look at like other shows that are in this vein, I think there are just better shows that are just much more interesting and much more funnier than this show. Again, this show just popped off because it came in at such an interesting time period in 2019, and that's all I can really comment about this show. Ugh, yeah, Bofuri season two. Um, yeah, Bofuri. I. What can I say about Bofuri that hasn't been said already? The first season of Bofuri, absolutely loved, absolutely enjoyed. I thought this was a really good, fun, bad anime to come out in 2020. I even acknowledged the show when this came out. When I made my best trash anime of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Second season, when it came out in 2023, this was pretty one dimensional, pretty forgettable, and just all around boring. It is just so goddamn boring from what it's supposed to aim for, and I'm just pretty disappointed that the show really went into the route that it did because it could have been a lot better. It really could have been a lot better, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Before season two just wasn't good. Next, True Beauty. This one is an ONA manhwa anime that came out last year. This was one of the best fun bad experiences of a manhwa anime I had to sit through last year, and I actually liked it. It was really really good. And honestly, from the will they not be, and the fact that if everyone finds out that I'm the ugliest person in the world, my popularity is gonna drop down and shit. And it's like the premise is really dumb. It's really stupid. And looking at like how the love dynamic and how like each character's backstory connects to each other and shit, it's still dumb to this day. Again, I wouldn't say this is like a top tier amazing fun bad anime out there, but this is definitely like a must watch if you want to watch something that's really funny, really dumbed down to say the least. But this was a fun experience. Uh, I think the reason I gave it a 5 out of 10 though was also because the animation was really choppy. It wasn't really smooth half the time, and there were moments where like it tried to go to that bully aspect that was kind of similar to Vivid Strike, and the show itself just wasn't really hitting it super well in my opinion. But it is what it is, I suppose, with True Beauty. All right, next, Cautious Hero. Yeah, another one that, for me personally, Cautious Hero was touted to be like the next big isekai trash anime that was be competing with the likes of Overlord, ReZero, and Konosuba, and Shield Hero. And unfortunately, Cautious Hero kind of fell on the wayside because while there were qualities of the show that were really good and really funny and actually were entertaining, were more like Konosuba esque, that's the whole point. Is that I felt like Cautious Hero was leaning a little bit too Konosuba esque to try to be like that show. And the fact that this was under White Fox Studios, I mean, the animation for the show is great. The voice acting is stellar, but it really is painting by the numbers when you have a show that's replicating another more successful show and it doesn't hit it super well or it makes it stand out like a sore thumb, sadly. So yeah, Cautious Hero, good show, but it's not one that I would go back on for looking about generic fun bad isekais. All right, next, Tacked Off Destiny. Man, Tacked Off Destiny was pretty damn disappointing to say the least. Had two studios collaborating, Madhouse and Mappa, when this came out in 2021. Had a really good story, really cool premise, and then the ending ends where it's like, oh, if you now want to watch the rest of Tacked Off Destiny and where our characters are going to go into, play our mobile game. And it's like, wow, that completely destroyed the momentum of Tacked Off Destiny. The moment you decide that, oh, you gotta play this mobile game to know the rest of the story, you kind of lost me on that. You just lost me at what made the show special in the first place. Again, the show is still really good. It's still entertaining, and the theme itself is still really good. It's just that now it's kind of big. It's pretty forgettable now when you look at the fact that this came out 4 years ago, and that's the sad reality of it. All right, next, Bokutachi no remake or remake Our Life. Um, yeah, what can be said about this one has been said. Remake Our Life is a really good show when it first came out. Had a really cool premise. It's taking like the whole time traveling aspect and making sure that our main boy sorry, our main boy Koya Hashibi basically has to rewind time, go back to his college days to fix his wrongs so that he can get a better positive outcome in his future. And he's given a second chance at things, and then it kind of goes to like some weird like consequences of what happens when he changes the past and what happens to the friends he makes along the way throughout college. And overall, like the show was really good for its time, but then the final moments of the show kind of ends a bit of a whimper, then leaving you amazed more or less. And that's kind of what made the show a 5 out of 10. Next, Wonder Egg Priority. No introduction on this one. This show is pretty bad because of the special that completely ruined and butchered this show in the first place. I don't need to elaborate why the show is bad. I already talked about it in my worst animes of 2021, why it was rated super high up there. This was pretty bad, and it really ruined what could have been an amazing show, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, Bartender Glass of God. This came out last year, believe it or not, and this was basically a readaptation of Bartender, the anime from 2006. And while they definitely captured the original Bartender from 2006 really well, I think Bartender Glass of God, um, it had a lot of strong qualities about it going for it, but it was lacking that punch to make it interesting. And by the end of it all, you're kind of just want to take another sip of beer and just kind of chug the fact that you kind of wasted 12 episodes watching the show. Again, really cool show, some really cool characters, really like amazing moments where they make the drinks and shit. But this became pretty sad and forgettable to say the least, unfortunately. So I'll leave it at that. All right, next, Senpai is in a Tokonoko. Yeah, this one was touted for me at the time to be like the next best fun bad anime of 2024, and after watching these 12 episodes last year, this became I don't even want to begin with this thing. God damn, this was pretty trash. It was terrible. It had everything going for it to be like fun bad, but then when you had the love triangle connections within these three characters, it became so painfully obvious that it wasn't even trying to be interesting. In fact, there are moments where it tried to be like super emotional and make you want to cry your eyes out. It feels like it's being forced upon your throat to care for these characters. And overall, not a really good experience for a show that I give it a 5 out of 10 on. All right, and then finally to wrap up this whole thing here of every show that I would probably list down so far that I give it a 5 out of 10 on. Yeah, Demon Slayer Husher Train arc. Look, we need to wake up, step back to reality that this Hashira training arc is the lowest point that Demon Slayer has gone into. I don't understand why this is an 8.08 when this thing was not good. It was so goddamn boring. Literally, the only moments of the show that were really good were the final two episodes of the show where it actually built up to the final movie that's airing as of right now. But outside of that, you have to fucking remember that the first 6 episodes were so goddamn boring. It's just comedic humor. There is nothing interesting about it. Yes, you get to learn about the Hashiras, but you barely get to know them within like 2, 3 fucking minutes per episode. Like, again, like, have we all forgotten how fucking painfully boring the first 6 episodes were? Like, I don't want to say, man, for anyone that gives this thing like an 8 or 7 out of 10, like this show was painfully mid when it first came out, and it just wasn't able to live up to the other seasons. Again, if you're saying that this is better than Swordsmith Village arc, or Red Light District arc, or even the first season of Demon Slayer, or even the Mugen Train arc movie, you are fucking coping. You are coping saying that this is the best arc since those shows have come out. That is ridiculous. And yeah, going a little bit of off tangent there, but yeah, that is basically it for every show that I've watched thus far that I've given like a 5 out of 10 that I'm willing to talk about more or less. Again, I have a lot more that I could talk about, but at that point, I could probably do a hentai of every 5 out of 10 hentai I've given. If you're all interested in that, I will be gladly to look through every hentai I have here and talk about it. But this is a pretty lengthy video, so I think I'll leave it at that. But yeah, just want to talk about this, and I'll see you all in the next one. Later.